The missing diver was listed as administrative error. That should have been my first warning. I was the engineering duty officer on the Hawthorne, a subsea maintenance platform, bolted to the continental shelf like a rusted barnacle. My job was pressure systems, structural integrity, keeping the station alive while the ocean tried, constantly, to crush it flat. I didn't handle personnel. I didn't handle dive rosters. But when ED3 Samuel Rourke failed to surface after a routine inspection dive, the system kicked the problem sideways until it landed on my desk. No panic alarm. No suit breach. No last transmission. Just a gap in the schedule where his name used to be, auto-filled with N/A like he'd never existed. I walked down to dive ops myself. Rourke missed check-in, I said to the supervisor, a man who looked like he'd aged 10 years since I last saw him 12 hours earlier. Why wasn't this escalated? He didn't meet my eyes. Because he came back. That stopped me cold. Then where is he? A pause. Too long. He's still working, the supervisor said. I laughed once, sharp and humorless. You don't lose divers and shrug it off. Either he's in decompression, medical, or a body recovery op. The man swallowed. You should see the footage. They pulled the dive cam from the archive. External suit feed, time-stamped, scrubbed clean of most metadata. Rourke descended like normal, tether steady, vitals boringly perfect. 30 meters down, he stopped kicking. Just hovered. His breathing slowed. Heart rate dropped into something that should have triggered an alarm, but didn't. The suit lights flickered, then stabilized brighter than speck. Pause it, I said. They did. Something moved behind him. Not fast, not aggressive, just a long shadow sliding through the dark, parallel to his body. Rourke turned his helmet slightly, like he'd sensed it. No surprise spike, no fear response. He raised one hand and waved. Play, I said quietly. The shadow resolved into a shape that made my stomach twist, long torso, arms too jointed, tail where legs should have been. Pale skin stretched tight over muscle built for water, not land. Gills flared along its neck. Its face was wrong in a way that wasn't exaggerated, just adapted. The thing reached out and touched Rourke's suit. The pressure readings flatlined. Then the suit unsealed itself. Every protocol I'd ever written screamed that was impossible. Rourke drifted free, helmet off, mouth opening. And instead of drowning, he inhaled. The creature wrapped an arm around him, pulled him close, and the camera caught Rourke's face one last time. Not panicked. Relieved. The feed cut out. I stared at the frozen frame until my eyes burned. That's not a man, I said. The supervisor finally looked at me. No, he agreed, but he still clocks in. That night, as I lay in my bunk, listening to the hull groan under pressure, I heard something outside the station. Metal scraping, tools clinking, and a low, wet humming, steady, familiar, like someone doing their job. Like someone doing their job. At 2:14, the maintenance log updated itself. No alert, no ping. Just a silent refresh of the task board on my terminal. I noticed it only because I was already awake, staring at the ceiling while the station creaked and popped like it was thinking about giving up. ED3. Rourke, external hull inspection. Complete. I sat up. That task had been scheduled for tomorrow. I swung my legs out of the bunk and pulled on my boots, my chest tight in a way that had nothing to do with pressure. The corridor lights dimmed automatically as I stepped out, throwing long shadows across bulkheads scabbed with old welds. The Hawthorne was never truly quiet, but the sounds had shifted, less random, more patterned, intentional. Dive ops was dark when I arrived, monitors idling in low-power mode. I keyed in with my override and brought up the external cameras. Feed after feed showed nothing but black water and drifting particulate, until camera 7 came online. Something was clamped to the hull. At first glance, it looked like a shadow caught in the station's floodlights, but then it moved, slow and practiced. Long fingers, webbed, jointed wrong, worked a torque wrench with delicate precision, tightening a bolt on a stress plate that had been flagged as compromised earlier that week. I recognized the tool. I'd signed it out to Rourke. The creature's upper body was mostly humanoid, corded muscle moving under pale, scar-latticed skin. Below the waist, a powerful tail coiled and uncoiled to keep it anchored against the current. Gills flared rhythmically along its neck as it worked, humming that same low tune I'd heard through the hull, a vibration that traveled through steel and into bone. The camera zoomed automatically. Its face turned toward the lens. It was Rourke. Not entirely. His eyes were larger, darker, adapted to the abyss, and his jawline had shifted subtly, reinforced. But the scar on his left cheek, the one he'd gotten from a botched weld years ago, was still there. So was the expression. Focused, calm, professional. He finished tightening the bolt, gave it a testing tug, then swam closer to the camera. For a long moment, he just hovered there, studying it like he knew exactly who was on the other side. Then he lifted one hand and tapped twice on the hull. Clang, clang. A message request popped up on my terminal. External audio channel, open. My mouth was dry as sand. Every part of my training screamed not to do it. Containment, chain of command, quarantine. Instead, I hit accept. The humming stopped. "Sir," Rourke said. His voice came through distorted by water and metal, but it was unmistakably his. Steady, respectful, a little tired. "We need to talk about the maintenance schedule." For a few seconds I couldn't breathe. Not because of fear, though that was there, but because my brain was trying to reconcile a voice I'd heard every day for 2 years with the image on the screen. The station groaned around me, a low structural complaint, like it didn't care whether monsters existed as long as someone kept tightening bolts. "Rourke," I said finally. My voice sounded thin in my own ears. "You're missing." There was a pause. On the camera feed, his gills flared wider, then settled. "Negative, sir," he said. "I'm accounted for. I submitted my hours." "Ah, I saw the footage." Another pause. Longer this time. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Figured you had." He drifted closer to the hull, one hand braced against the steel. Up close, the changes were more obvious. His shoulders were broader, musculature redistributed for constant resistance. Veins traced faint blue lines beneath his skin, pulsing in time with the water. Where his legs should have been, the tail moved with slow, powerful economy, like it had never known clumsiness. "What the hell happened to you?" I asked. He glanced away, not ashamed, exactly, but thoughtful. "I went too deep on that inspection," he said, "past where the charts stop being confident. There's a trench under us the maps don't agree on. Pressure's weird down there. Temperature too. That doesn't do this." "No," he agreed, "but something else does." On another camera feed, movement flickered at the edge of visibility. Then another, shapes circling the station at a respectful distance, just beyond the floodlights. Similar silhouettes, different sizes. My stomach sank. "You're not the only one." "No, sir." "How many?" "Whoa." He hesitated. "Depends how you're counting." I leaned back against the console, suddenly very aware of how much water sat above us. "Why keep working?" I asked. "Why not just leave?" Rourke looked genuinely surprised by the question. "Because the station needs it," he said. "You've got microfractures in 3 external braces, corrosion in the intake ring, and a stress imbalance on the north strut that'll fail in 6 months if nobody touches it. You're fixing those." "Yes, sir." "Because..." His eyes met the camera again. "Because it's my job." The simplicity of it knocked the air out of me. "You can't just stay out there," I said. "Command will notice. They'll send teams, scientists, military." "I know," he said. "That's why I'm telling you." I rubbed my face with both hands. "Telling me what?" That the missing diver report was an error, he said calmly. I'm still on duty. I can still work longer shifts than before. I don't need air, and decompression doesn't apply anymore. From a safety standpoint, I'm an upgrade. I laughed then, an ugly, broken sound. You're calling yourself an upgrade. Not officially, he said. HR would need to sign off. Despite everything, despite the impossible thing floating outside my station, tightening bolts like this was just another night shift. A part of me almost smiled. Almost. What do you want from me, Rourke? I asked. The shapes in the water drifted closer, lights catching on pale skin and unfamiliar forms. Not threatening. Waiting. I want you to stop trying to get us killed with rushed schedules, he said gently, and I want you to help me keep this place standing. And in return. He leaned in close to the camera, close enough that I could see the fine ridges along his cheeks, the way the water moved differently around him. In return, he said, nothing else down here bothers you. The station creaked again, louder this time. Somewhere deep below us, something shifted, massive, slow, disinterested. I looked at the maintenance log, at the completed tasks, at the projected failure points quietly disappearing one by one, then back at the screen. Clock in at 600 like everyone else, I said. And for God's sake, don't scratch the paint. Rourke smiled. Aye, aye, sir. The audio cut. The cameras showed him swimming away, rejoining the others as they fanned out across the hull, tools glinting in the dark like stars. Outside, the monsters worked. Inside, the station held. And for the first time since I'd taken this assignment, I slept knowing the ocean wasn't trying to kill us tonight. It had employees. I was wrong about that last part. The ocean doesn't stay satisfied. 3 weeks passed without incident. If you could call having a pod of mermen performing preventative maintenance without incident. Command signed off on the revised schedules after the metrics improved so dramatically it embarrassed their models. Fewer alarms, less structural stress, energy efficiency up 12%. They sent congratulatory messages full of exclamation points and buzzwords. No one asked how. Rourke kept his word. Nothing large came near the station. Nothing curious. The shapes below stayed at depth, moving like slow thoughts in the dark. When I reviewed external feeds, I sometimes saw silhouettes watching the mermen work, but they never approached. Whatever hierarchy existed down there, Rourke and his kind were clearly not at the bottom. It was on day 22 that the intake filters clogged. That alone wasn't unusual. What was unusual was how fast it happened. Organic matter packed in so densely the flow rate dropped by half in under an hour. Alarms rippled through the station, red lights blooming like infections. I pulled up the cameras. The water around the intake was thick with drifting coral fragments. Not broken, placed, interlocked in a way that caught debris and grew worse by the minute. Rourke, I said into the comm. No response. Rourke, respond. Static. Then, faintly, his voice, strained. Sir, he said, we've got a problem. On the external feed, I saw him braced against the current, tail fighting the pull. Behind him, the darkness moved, not circling this time, advancing. What kind of problem? I asked. The kind that thinks this station is on its territory, he said, and doesn't recognize our employment contract. Something enormous slid into view, too smooth, too broad, its body studded with living reef that pulsed faintly with bioluminescence. An eye the size of a rover lens opened, focusing on the intake. It didn't look angry. It looked hungry. We can clear the blockage, Rourke said quickly, but once it realizes the station isn't food. It'll try again, I finished. Yes, sir. My hands hovered over the controls, evacuation protocols, distress beacons, things that would bring attention we could never put back. Rourke, I said, making a decision I'd never be trained for. How long can you hold it off? There was a pause, then softly. Long enough, he said, but I'll need help. On the feed, the other mermen turned as one, moving toward the thing in the dark, not like workers now, but like a line being drawn. Outside, the monsters stopped fixing the station. They started defending it.